Within the last 24 hours, Jim Farley has basically said General Motors won't make a profit on their electric cars. He thinks they're mad. And this is a very obvious statement from Jim Farley. He's clearly saying, what on earth are they thinking? I believe what they're promising isn't true. And if you look at Sandy Munro's recent video on the Ultium battery pack, then, well, I think Jim is 100% correct. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm the Electric Viking. Thank you for tuning in. My name is Sam Evans. General Motors Ultium platform batteries. Are they as Ultium as what GM claim? Well, Sandy Munro would tell you no. They'd say, well, there's a lot of stuff in their battery packs that's useless. They're possibly adding things in that don't need to be there. They haven't really thought out what they're doing to the degree that they should have. Reason why the battery packs are too heavy, complicated. Anyway, that's what Sandy Munro had to say. I haven't taken it apart myself. I don't really know. But I do know that the claims GM are making about the Silverado seem to be, well, let's say optimistic if they're using the current Ultium batteries, which they are. Ultium batteries are not particularly energy dense. They're okay. Obviously, they're a nickel-based chemistry. Really not groundbreaking in any way. GM say that they are, but the truth is, they're just similar battery packs to what you see in, for example, many other electric cars from Volkswagen Group, from Mercedes, from many companies. So, General Motors have come out. They say the new Silverado is going to have 450 miles of range, right? Jim Farley's going, yeah, okay, that sounds great, but there's only one way for you to achieve that. Therefore, you're not going to make a profit selling your vehicles at those prices. And the reason he says this is because General Motors have released prices for the Silverado electric pickup truck. Now, I made a video about that. I'll put a link in the description. And they released at the same time the range of those vehicles and the prices. Prices, range, Jim goes, looks at the prices, looks at the range, says, yeah, that's not going to work. I actually think Jim Farley knows what he's talking about here. He made the very wise decision quite a long time ago, in fact, to invest in a lithium iron phosphate battery plant in North America. This is the smartest decision Ford have made in more than a decade as a company. People will look back and they'll say, yeah, okay, that was the moment when Jim actually did something that made a lot of sense. Now, here's what has actually happened. And here you can see, I'm reading into this a little bit, but I think it's very, very clear what Jim Farley is saying. I have no idea what's going on in the industry right now. All I hear is all these announcements of 450 miles of range, 500 miles of range. There was another one today about a 3-row crossover. It's going to go electric. These batteries are huge. If you have those kinds of batteries, you will not make money. Now, the thing is, Jim's correct, because not only are these batteries nickel-based chemistry batteries, which are much more expensive than the battery packs that Ford will be producing within a few years, which are lithium iron phosphate, but they're very heavy. I mean, they're not structural battery packs. That would have reduced the weight, right? They're not particularly massively high energy density. That would have potentially reduced the weight. So I think Jim has a really good point here. And when I made this Silverado electric truck video, I was surprised. I was very surprised by the range. I was very optimistic. I was very thinking, this is amazing. This is fantastic. But clearly Jim's right. The only way for GM to achieve their numbers that they've actually revealed is to put huge battery packs in their cars. If they're selling them at the prices that they've listed them at, well, we all know that General Motors won't be making a profit on those vehicles. So Ford is saying, well, we aren't planning on making any super long range vehicles because we can't make a profit on them. They're losing $20,000 per car sold. So they're just being pragmatic here. I agree with this concept. Ford actually recently announced an upcoming full-size 3-row electric SUV, so a 7-seat electric SUV, sort of similar to the Ford Expedition. Now, if you want to get an idea on what it looks like, I'm pretty confident it's the Ford Expedition that you can now buy the electric version of the ID4 that Ford make. You can now buy that in Europe. It'll probably look very similar to that vehicle, I think. Similar size. It's actually a very practical size. I quite like it. However, Ford say the new Expedition will have a 100 kilowatt hour battery, giving the vehicle 350 miles of range. So if a much bigger vehicle, right, has a 450 mile range, how big is the battery pack? maybe 170, 180 kilowatt hour battery size. That's massive. And the prices seem very reasonable coming from General Motors. So General Motors either have some sort of new technology they haven't revealed to us, or yeah, they're going to take a hit in terms of price. Maybe they'll release them and then do what Ford did with the F-150, increase the price 5 successive times after revealing the vehicle. To give some context here, the GM Hummer EV has a 205 kilowatt hour battery pack. Now, that means it's the heaviest electric truck you can buy anywhere in the world. The thing weighs an absolutely astronomical 6,500 pounds. However, the new Ram pickup truck has an even bigger battery. The Ram 1500 Rev, the fully electric version, not the hybrid version, will use a 229 kilowatt hour size battery pack to give it 500 miles of range. That is utterly enormous. So Farley says he doesn't understand the obsession with battery size. Rather than worrying about what range they can get with a reasonable battery size and good efficiency, some automakers are shooting for the stars to tout something outright ridiculous. It's really more marketing claims, probably. It's safe to say this is no different than what we've seen for years as automakers have competed to make bigger models, faster, louder, etc. Farley said, we're not going to make a 600-mile range vehicle. We're going to make the smallest possible battery for competitive range. Now, eventually this will change. By the time we get to 2030, energy density in battery packs, price of battery packs will come down. So therefore, yeah, you're going to see 600-mile range vehicles from Ford, General Motors, Ram, Tesla. It's going to be pretty normal, but that's still 7 years away. I mean, there's a lot of work to do before we get to that point. I don't think GM are ready for that yet. I don't think Ram are ready for that yet. So it's going to be interesting to see all these companies compete against each other because they're going to drive prices down. They're going to drive efficiency. They're going to drive improvements in battery technology. But I don't see any major improvements in terms of making the vehicles lighter. That's what I think they need to focus on. Tesla is obsessed with reducing the weight of their vehicles. The reason the Model Y is by far the lightest vehicle in the world when it comes to electric cars in that size. The Model Y is well and truly the lightest weight for its size in the industry. And I think that's really important to remember. The lighter you can make the car, the more efficient you can make it. Structural battery packs are a great idea. Gigacastings are a great idea. This is what GM, Ford, and Ram, in my opinion, and in fact, not just these companies, but all legacy automakers should be focusing on. That's what Ford is in fact focusing on with their second generation Ford F-150 Lightning that they're working on right now. Now, Ford says if they use a 100 kilowatt hour size battery pack in a 7-seat 3-row family vehicle, it'll get around 300 miles or more of range, a little bit more than that possibly. And that's enough. I think he's got a point. I think 350 miles of range is enough if the charging speed is fast enough. If the charging speed is not fast enough, I disagree. F-150 Lightning charging speed is too slow for a battery pack of that size. 150 kilowatt charging speed, you need faster charging for a really big battery pack. That's important. So these companies, if you have, say, 250 kilowatt charging speed, that's fast enough for a bigger battery pack in a bigger vehicle. So focusing on getting that charging speed up is probably more important than putting massive batteries. Keep in mind, Tesla's making a profit. Ford's making a loss. GM are making a loss on their EVs, of course. How are Tesla doing this? They're putting in smaller battery packs. They focus to the absolute limits on how they can improve efficiency to get that battery pack smaller so that they can make a profit. How long can you stay in business if you make a loss of $20,000 per car? Not long. Jim Farley is right. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and thank you for watching.